You've tuned into InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, a video podcast series. Our episode starts right now. Here's your host, Dominique Vale.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the InvisiYouth Chat Sessions, where you can check in for your dose of stigma-breaking, humor-filling, motivation-loving life hacks and empowering tips for all of the medically adultish people in your life. I'm Dominique Vale, founder of InvisiYouth Charity and your host for InvisiYouth Chat Sessions. And today we are back for Season 7, Episode 109, and we're going to be talking about one of life's major topics that you either love to talk about or worry to talk about. We're talking finance, people. No, please do not stop this podcast because you might panic. We are going to have lots of fun talking about finances with someone who's a friend of InvisiYouth and mine, so it's going to feel like a chat with friends talking about finance. Don't you worry. It's accountant for content creators, small businesses, and freelancers, and financial advisor Emily Vass, working in accounting roles for over 10 years, and her own personal experience having been a content creator, which is how we initially connected to InvisiYouth as well. Emily has worked through both sides of being an accountant and working as well for herself. She's dedicated to specializing in assisting small business owners and giving financial advice to help clients manage their finances effectively, while also taking away some of those initial fears and worries about finance so everyone can feel empowered and have those insights to take their businesses and their platforms and grow successfully and feel confident in doing so. Emily really provides so many valuable resources and knowledge for content creators and for anyone online as well looking to gain some knowledge so they can understand the world of finance with more confidence and offer that support for people so they can succeed. I would definitely recommend giving a follow. She makes some really fun videos, guys. You'll really enjoy them. And beyond professional commitments, Emily really shares insights and engages with her audience so well. She has, with her YouTube channel, discussing financial management topics that could be relevant to her clients, and her Instagram with over 15,000 followers. So like I said, great place to be. So we love people that evolve and grow and getting to talk about finances. So I'm thrilled to get to have Emily on the podcast. So Emily, welcome to the chat sessions.
Thank you so much. What an intro. Gosh, you have me blushing.
I'm so excited. Like I said, it'll feel like two friends getting to talk about some finance. So for everyone who's getting worried or wanting some advice and feeling nervous, we're going to have a good time talking about this. So don't worry. Emily's going to make it fun. We promise it'll be a fun podcast to listen to.
Absolutely.
And absolutely. And as you guys know, we have all of our fun segments. We're going to be getting some what would be those top questions you might ask for some financial advice. We're going to have story time. Don't you worry. And make sure you are right now clicking that subscribe button. So if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure you've subscribed. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you've done that as well. And I'll remind you a little later at the end of the show to do that. And before we continue into those other segments, we've got to get to know Emily better. We're going to do first few words.
First few words.
We have our new spin on an OG segment where we're going to be asking those quick, fun, and quirky questions to Emily to get to know her better. So we're going to be keeping her on her toes and probably keeping me on my toes as I go through and rapid these questions so Emily can give the first few words she thinks of for all of these different answers. So Emily, are you ready to have some fun?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. Okay, so what would be the first thing you would do if you've won the lottery?
Take all my family on holiday.
Ooh, okay. Now, where would we go on holiday?
I think if everybody was coming, probably Disney.
Oh. Are we going Europe Disney? Are we going America Disney? Where are we going?
I mean, if we've just won the lottery, we're going America Disney.
There we go. I love that. There we go. What was the first job or maybe the most unique job you've ever had?
I think my first job was my most unique. I taught little children how to swim. So the toddlers straight after armbands, like I was in the pool basically playing baby keep me uppy to stop them sinking.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God. That feels so deeply responsible too, to be like a first time experience.
Yeah, and I was like 12. I really don't know why they hired me, but I'd stand there in a t-shirt and stop children drowning.
Oh my God. I love that. What was your favorite song that you danced to at your wedding?
I'm a very big Swiftie.
Okay.
So my first dance was a mashup of Taylor Swift songs, and then we actually finished the night with Love Story with all of my bridesmaids and sisters on the dance floor, and it was a very good time.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's so sweet. Okay. What would be if you picked your favorite age you've had so far in life? What would be your favorite age?
Ooh. So honestly, right now,
Oh,
I
I
actually
love that.
feel like I'm in a Thrive era, which I love. So yeah, grateful to be here today.
I like that a lot. What would be what was the last TV show that you watched that you were like, I would give this a full rewatch all over again?
I feel like my ultimate rewatch show is Grey's Anatomy. I think I've watched it start to finish about 3 times. But my latest Netflix binge, which I actually finished today, was Million Dollar Secret, where somebody has $1 million in a box and they have to kind of bluff that they don't have $1 million. Interesting concept and very addictive TV.
Oh God, now I feel like I need to go check that out and see if I have that. I'm going to need to watch that now too.
Yeah.
If you were going to add a new pet to the family, what pet type or what pet would you want to get?
So for people who already follow me, they will know that I'm pretty obsessed with my Cocker Spaniel, Callie. She's about to turn 2 and is pretty much the love of my life. So definitely another dog. If I had to get another one, probably another Cocker Spaniel. I just have to hope that they became best friends rather than mortal enemies.
Oh my God, I would agree. I would like that a lot. What is your favorite way to take your tea or coffee?
So I'm actually a really bad Brit because I don't really drink either. Caffeine and a bowel condition are not best friends, so I tend to avoid. So hot chocolate. Yeah, I'm like a child that never grew up.
That is a classic choice as well, so I thoroughly enjoy that one as well.
Honestly, it's hot chocolate or orange squash. Real adulting here.
I like that. Oh my God. What would be 2 things you would never leave the house without, excluding your phone?
Ooh, good one. Probably my Kindle. I'm a big book person, so sometimes it's an audiobook on my phone, but if not, love to have my Kindle. And lip balm. I'm a dry girly, so never leave the house without it.
Ditto. That is always in my bag. It moves. I have multiple versions in the wall to make sure. I agree. What would be if you had a party game or a game that you were like, this is going to make me the most competitive, I want to win every time we play it? Do you have one?
Honestly, all of them. I'm very competitive and love a board game, but during the pandemic, I became a bit of a Catan addict. I don't know if you've ever played that. Pretty serious board game, resource management, but supposedly it's mostly luck-based because there are dice involved, but I'm not going to lie, I usually win.
I like that. I like that a lot. That's a unique one. I like that. What's a word that you use in your financial consulting or accounting that's sort of like one of your favorite finance jargon terms to use?
Probably cash flow. I think as business owners, we often worry way too much about what we're making and not enough about the actual cash that we have in our bank account. And that's one of the main reasons small businesses fail. So getting people to think about their cash.
Oh, it's just that I also enjoy just having to say it's a nice ring to bring up all the time. I enjoy that. What would be if you had a second home anywhere in the world, where would you like it to be?
Italy. I love Italy. I got engaged in Italy. Italian food is my favorite. So yeah, in another life, going off to some villa in Tuscany and learning the language would be brilliant.
Oh, the Italian in me really, stamps of approval on that. Yeah. I agree fully with that one. What was the best gift you've either given to someone or received that's very memorable to you?
I think for me, honestly, the best gift is always photos. And maybe it's because I've created content a long time and I like being behind the camera, but giving photos of special moments is my favorite because I think people are always so emotional when you get them. I think the favorite gift I've ever got was actually something really similar. So my brother got a painting done, an actual portrait of one of mine and my husband's engagement pictures, and gave it to us as a wedding gift, which was insane. It's so big that I need a bigger house to hang it on the wall. So I have to admit, it hasn't been hung up yet. And we've nearly got to our 1-year anniversary, but it was a very special gift.
I love that. Oh my God. I feel like I need to do that for my sister and brother-in-law's anniversary or something.
I'll have to send you a picture of it. Honestly,
I
it's
do.
massive.
That sounds so beautiful. That's so sweet. And then last question. If you had 2 words to describe yourself as an accountant, what would you say?
I think I definitely try to be kind. I think accountants are sometimes seen as really scary and unapproachable. So I always definitely try to make sure that the people I work with feel like they can ask me anything. And I think a lot of that stems from just being non-judgmental and also supportive. Like, I want people to genuinely understand their finances, not just sign the stuff that I give them, and supporting them to really get there.
I 2 words I love when it comes to talking about finance. I appreciate that a lot. That takes us into the theme of how we're going to have the rest of this episode. So I appreciate it. And something else you guys know I also love is our InvisiYouth charity shop. You know, I'm going to be talking about our Subtle Activist color block bracelets. You've seen I've been wearing a couple, and they are on display behind me. You'll see our graphic popping up as well. It is our Subtle Activist color block bracelets that are made by our volunteers. They help us run our shop that is exclusive on Etsy, where you can buy one of our bracelets. We have free global shipping, and 100% of every sale goes directly towards funding our free programs and resources we provide every month. We have 5 that come out every single month that you guys can get. If you sign up for free in our Galaxy Hub by InvisiYouth newsletter, you get access to all of them in one place, and 100% of every sale goes directly towards it. So it's basically like making a $4 donation and then getting a beautiful bracelet in return. They are adjustable. They come in 2 sizes, very gender neutral, chic. And we say it's subtle activism. It's like that Starbucks cup in the Game of Thrones scene. We like to spark that curiosity of, what is that? And you get to then raise some awareness for young adults living in the chronic illness and disability community and helping them in their personal development of living life with any chronic illness or disability. So if you are able to just go to our Etsy page and buy a bracelet, or for yourself or someone you love, it definitely helps us so much. So the link is on the screen, and it is also in our description and show notes. So definitely go check out the shop if you haven't already yet. And we're going to do something else that we love now. Besides bracelets, we're going to go build a toolkit, everyone. We're going into What's in Your Toolkit.
What's in your toolkit? What's in your toolkit? What's in your toolkit? You know we love a good tip sheet or a guide sheet to help us make life more easy, more accessible, and more enjoyable for you while living with a chronic illness or disability. And so, you know, we are going to be talking about getting some advice on our topic for today. So we are going to be chatting with Emily, diving deep into building that toolkit of knowledge from her background, being an accountant, and getting some financial advice here. So, and her background in it as well, because we want all of you guys to feel confident on this topic as well. So I know, like I had said when we started, the first way we were connected obviously was through your content creation work and you doing so much beautiful photography and your work in the chronic illness space and doing so much advocacy, which was amazing. But on the other side of your life, you were doing accounting work and being an accountant for so many years. So what initially drew you to accountant work and made you enjoy finding finance and being a part of that?
I've always loved numbers. I was definitely that kid at school that thrived in maths class, and I liked the fact there was always a right answer. And from a really young age, it's something that I feel like I've understood better than my friends. One of the jobs that I had as a teenager was a maths tutor. Like, I would help other people get through their exams, even when I hadn't sat them myself. So I think it's always something I've had a passion for in terms of helping people understand their numbers. And when I went to uni, needed a job, wanted to travel, pay the bills, and I went to work at a local accounting firm. And at the time, the only job I didn't want to do was become an accountant. My dad was an accountant. I thought his job was boring, wasn't interested in doing it. But Taylor's oldest time, got to graduation and realised that actually I had a lot of accountancy work experience. And if I was being honest, I kind of liked it. So I decided that I would get the qualification. It was about the same time that I was being diagnosed with my chronic illness. And I liked the fact that, you know, if I got the ACA, which is the chartered accountancy qualification here in the UK, that I'd always have that piece of paper to fall back on. And even if I had to have career breaks because of health, I would always have something that enabled me to earn decent money in the future. And then I left after I qualified and went to work at a bigger company in industry doing finance there, but then ultimately decided that I wanted to try something different and work for myself. And ultimately I set up my business because it allows me to combine kind of my passion for the content creation that you were talking about and with my profession and with the kind of years that I've spent in corporate, and help other small business owners do it too.
Yeah, I love that. Like you said, it was something that was sort of, it took an interest of yours and then continued to expand it more and more into what you do. So I think that's a really unique way for people to see that they can kind of like pinpoint their interests and hobbies and then kind of see how that translates into a career and then continue to kind of evolve them. Because so many times young people worry, if I pick a lane, I have to stay in it, especially when you have a health issue. If it works for your health, you don't like the idea of changing it or what that could look like. So I like that you kind of continue to piece the things together to then get to where you are now and kind of fuse the different things together.
Yeah, I think the perception we have of careers and the reality of them are often really different. I think as a teenager, I assumed my dad was sat doing spreadsheets all day. And don't get me wrong, I love Excel and I spend my fair amount of time on Excel, but actually most of my day is spent speaking to people and helping them understand their businesses and set financial strategy and creating educational content online. So it's actually much more of a people person job than you might think.
Oh, no, I definitely really in like learning that part. And even kind of going off of that too, one thing we always hear about in the chronic illness and disability space is a lot of them will go into entrepreneurial work or being a part of a small business or content creation because it allows for that flexibility with your health needs, or they want to try it. But then sort of that worry of being in charge of so much of your day to day with your health, then your work, and then now your finances too can kind of feel very overwhelming. So how do you advise people not to feel that overwhelming nature when it comes to being in charge of so much? And then now they're going to have to learn being in charge of their own finances, and it might not be something they're familiar with or know how to manage.
I think in general, freelance life and being an entrepreneur can get quite glamorized, and it's not a lifestyle that suits everybody. So I think my first tip would be think really carefully if it's really what is right for you. I know here in the UK, if you become freelance, no more sick pay, no more paid holiday. So you do have to be responsible for yourself in a different way. I mean, for me, it's given me so much flexibility and has definitely improved my health, but I definitely put things in place to make sure that that was the case. Obviously, I'd recommend that people get help with their finances, get a good accountant, get someone that can support you and make sure that that side of your business is taken care of. And then also take a look into things like insurance to give you a backup. Obviously, I know health insurance in the US is a whole thing, but
yes,
here we can get things like critical illness cover. That means, if I was to fall unwell and be unable to work for a period of time, I have insurance that means I'd be covered and that things would be paid for. And that definitely, I think, reduces the stress, which ultimately reduces the odds of me having a flare and being able to keep working. I think also being really honest with the people that you work with about the fact that you are working with a chronic illness. It's easy to think that you're going to be judged, but in my experience, you often aren't. And if you're upfront and saying, actually, I'm having a bit of a flare in symptoms right now, or can we move the timeline for this project? People are really open to that if you are upfront about why you need things to change.
Yeah, like you said, as long as if you're able to adapt to what you need in terms of working for yourself or working for others, and you still achieve the same end goals and all of the projects, it doesn't really matter the path that you do. It might not be as linear as someone else. You're still getting to the same end goal. So especially, I think, like you said, a lot of people worry, or people going to think I can't achieve the same job, or me getting those raises that I would want that would be helping me be financially independent if they see me asking for those assistance pieces or accommodations, that I'm going to now not be looked at as still achieving the same end goal. But you have to remind yourself you are. It's just the path, like you said, looks a little different. So it's that kind of reminder to everybody to kind of lean into the skills that you have. And then that can kind of help you manage your from the finance side manage better of your understanding of how you do different things?
I think also being able to lean into the good bits of being self-employed. As I said, there are lots of negatives. There are lots of things that you lose, but there's also a lot that you gain. So something I really struggled with when I first became self-employed is I found myself sticking to that classic 9 to 5 sort of work schedule, Monday to Friday. Yeah. And what I realized is I'm my own boss. Nobody's telling me that that's how I need to work. Yeah. I'm often up really early in the morning because of my chronic illness. And so I actually start work really early on days when I'm feeling well, and I get things done, and I then clock off halfway through the afternoon. Or if I have a bad night of symptoms and I've not slept, I give myself that lie-in and I get up and I work later. Maybe one random day in the week was a write-off. I'll work at the weekend. Nobody's saying that you have to work in a traditional way, so don't be afraid to use the freedom that you've got.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you said, it's a really good point. It allows you to not leave things to the end or feel like you have to fit a mold. So you're not getting overwhelmed constantly. That way I think is really helpful. And even going into the kind of, obviously your accounting work when you've had your clients that way, but then also now doing this work and having clients on the other side that are entrepreneurs and content creators. Do you see that you might be having similar concerns or similar challenges that you're running into with them, that you're like, oh, these are challenges when it comes to their finances, and I'm kind of seeing a similar theme that people are coming and running across?
I think a lot of people don't understand the concept of having to save for tax, because in the UK, normally our taxes are taken when we get paid. So as a freelancer, suddenly it becomes your job to put that money aside. And there's often a very big time difference between when you receive that income and when you have to pay the tax. So at first, I think getting your head around that, understanding that that was kind of never your money, and that if you were an employee, you'd never have even seen it, is definitely a big thing to adapt to for a lot of people. And also the uncertainty, the fact that you'll have some months where you might earn triple your old salary, and then you'll have other months where it'll feel like crickets and no one's paying you on time. And getting used to that uncertainty and managing your cash flow so that you can pay yourself consistently and not worry about your bills is definitely something that I think takes people a little while to get to, especially if they've tried it on their own to start with without the right support.
Yeah, no, that is true. It's sort of like that pre-planning ahead of doing it, because so many people, like you said, in the small business space or being a content creator, they enjoy the creative element. Even building my own nonprofit when I was 22 and in university doing it, the financial end of, oh, what tax forms do I need to fill out, or what do I need to be registered under? None of that fell into my planning until I was starting to build. And then someone that I had started consulting with other nonprofits, they went, I really feel like you need to start talking to some accountants and lawyers so that you know what you need. Because obviously anyone listening can understand Emily and I have very different accents. So Emily's end of things is very UK oriented and mine would be US. So different, getting tax exemption, being in a 501c3 in the US, you have to file for those, be approved, have that renewal every year. And every financial bracket you're in, you file different forms. And so you're always having to be on top of things that when you start a business, that's not, if you don't do, like you said, that financial awareness or that pre-planning of the logistic half of running your own business, which a lot of people don't think of when they're building something, then you kind of become confused or overwhelmed during the process of, oh God, wait, what forms am I filling out? Or who should I, like you said, what money should I be holding for taxes? Like all of that starts to feel like a bigger deal than it actually on your end. When you're speaking to your clients, it probably, once they realize it, they're like, oh, okay, it's just these few things every year, or if I can stay on top of these few things each month, it won't feel as overwhelming as it probably does when they don't have that kind of pre-knowledge or pre-research ahead of time.
Absolutely. And I think we all have different zones of genius, right? And I think when we start a business, it's normally because we've got a passion, and then we have to do everything else that comes along with it that probably in some cases is a long way from their passion. So for example, if you set up a marketing agency and you did that because you're passionate about marketing, you probably don't want to do your accounts. And if your IT systems crashed, you probably didn't want to be your own head of IT. But when you're the only person in your company, you're the head of everything. And I think realizing what's the furthest outside of that zone of genius and what of those things can you really not afford to get wrong, and then getting help there is definitely the best place to start. and not being afraid to ask. I wouldn't want to run a charity. I wouldn't have a clue what I was doing. I certainly wouldn't want to run a marketing agency. I'd be awful at it. So it's okay to not be good at everything. That's why we all specialize in different stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And even kind of the last question before we go into our intermission, what is sort of the best piece of advice you give to people that want to feel more confident and comfortable talking about their finances, whether that's with their accountants and financial advisors, or even just with family and friends that they want to ask questions to? But there is, like you say, there's this sort of stigma of, oh, I'm talking about money, or how do I ask those questions when I feel like I just have a natural level of ignorance on the subject, and you don't want to come off like you don't know something.
I think when it comes to other finance professionals, so like your accountant or a financial advisor, make sure you're working with the right people. If you're working with someone that doesn't make you feel like you can ask questions, I would say you're working with the wrong person. You're paying them, and they should be willing to help you understand. And if they're not, maybe consider looking elsewhere, because I think it's really important that you work with someone that's going to help you understand your numbers and understand your finances, because otherwise, how can you make the right decisions for you? And that's not just about driving business growth or hitting new targets and growing new numbers, but it's also about building a company and a business that aligns with what you want out of it. We don't all want to build 7-figure companies. A lot of us want to build companies that achieve our other goals or that provide us with a lifestyle that we want. And actually working with somebody that takes the time to get to know you and what you really want out of this is, I think, really, really important to build that safe space that then allows you to feel like you can ask those stupid questions. Yeah. One of the values I have in my business that I say to literally every client on the first call that we have together is, there is no such thing as a stupid question. I don't believe in it. I've heard them all before. And how can there be when we don't get taught this stuff at school? No one would call me stupid for asking Google Translate to tell me what an Italian menu meant, because obviously I don't know Italian. Yeah. And it's totally normal for people to not know all of this finance stuff too.
I love how you said that.
Personal finance, it's a bit different. I think we've got to understand that, unfortunately, there is a bit of a taboo about money in society, and that it's totally normal to feel awkward speaking to friends and family about money. One of the things that I found helped with my own friends is to be willing to be open, share a bit of your own personal information or the way that you're feeling about things. And actually, it often encourages a bit more open dialogue. Something that people are really bad at doing here in the UK is talking about how much they earn. We're a bit stiff upper lip about these things. And actually, the only people that win, if you aren't willing to discuss what you earn, are the employers. Because if you don't realise that you're being underpaid compared to your colleague, you can't advocate for yourself. And so actually being open with your friends and your colleagues about what you're earning is often really helpful. And I've found in the past, being willing to kind of put myself out there and share that information in certain settings with people that I trust has actually then allowed them to feel like they can be open in return and open up about things like that. And in the end, it's actually meant that we've all been able to advocate for ourselves better. I've had friends that I've sent in going, you are not being paid enough, go and ask for your worth. And they wouldn't have been able to do that and get the pay rises that they got if we hadn't had those open conversations about money. So start slow, but they're definitely important ones to have.
Yeah, that's really, like you said too, it's that the fact that with especially personal finance, that it is personal. So it should feel a bit uncomfortable in some capacity because you are sharing a piece of personal information with those around you. But like you said, you'll never really know how to evolve and grow your own finances if you don't know what your counterparts are doing or what would be a raise you would feel that you would consider you would need. Even in my other work outside of the charity, it was me talking with my family of, okay, well, I can do enough research online of what I know other people make, but then what would be sort of how many extra hours am I working? And that's what even my dad sat with me and said, well, here's all the extra hours you're working, because he had me like clock them for so many months, and then said, so this should technically be your average increase because this is the extra work you're not being paid for that you're now doing. And when I brought in numbers to my boss, she then kind of was like, yeah, you're right. And it wasn't even a conversation. It was just sort of, that's very true. And she knew how much I was working, and it was an easier conversation than sort of, like you said, the panic that you walk into early of feeling like you're asking for something on a topic that makes you nervous or uncomfortable. So if you do that open dialogue, like you said, more, you feel more confident than asking different questions or asking for what you need, because you've kind of taken it out of kind of a darker, more taboo, like you said, subject, and brought it forward to more people. And then more people want to talk about it themselves because they might have their own questions as well once you bring it up.
Absolutely. I think definitely with close relationships, if you've got a partner, it's so important to be open about finances, because if you're considering merging your finances with somebody, could be that getting married or even just housemates, if you don't have those conversations, often I think somebody is sat there feeling awkward. I've definitely had situations at the past, at university, things like that, where people had come from different financial backgrounds and needed different things. And it took someone being willing to be brave and saying, actually, I can't afford that much rent. Can we look at a different option? Or could I take the smaller room and pay a bit less? And those conversations can feel really heavy, but actually I think if you have them up front, it can often lead to people feeling much happier with the outcome.
Yeah, I love that. I think that'll help with a lot of people feeling that initial question or wanting to talk about it. It'll help them kind of dive into that first few words of asking those questions or talking about it. I think that'll be good confidence boosting for them. And we're going to have some way more fun questions talking finance in a little bit, but we have another segment to get to. Don't worry, I know you all are waiting for story time, so hold on one second before we get there, because as always, I like to thank you guys for listening and watching InvisiYouth Chat Sessions. It is our first digital resource that InvisiYouth started providing years ago, and now we have a whole bundle of resources that you have access to for every month for free, whether it is our other audio resource, our digital downloads, and our educational glossary, or our interactive newsletter that you can get access to, the Galaxy Hub. All of those resources we provide for free so that you can have tangible tools to improve your mental well-being and personal development, living with a chronic illness and disability, so that non-medical aspect of life with any health struggle, you can have those different resources and pieces of advice to adapt and grow. That's why we pop up our donate link on the screen, because 100% of every donation goes directly towards funding all of these free resources and programs, so that more teens and young adults in the over 13 countries that download our resources and utilize them are able to gain access to them for free every month. And it's because of donors like you that are able to donate any amount that we are able to keep our lights on and continue providing these resources as we are heading into now being our 10-year, as this is June, it is our 10-year anniversary. So being able to do this for 10 years is because of donors like yourselves. So if you or someone you love is able to pay it forward on your behalf and make a donation, or you are, every single cent really does make an impact. So we really do appreciate it so much. And that link is, like I said, on our screen and in our description and show notes too. And without further ado, something else we're going to be talking about that we know you love. It's story time, guys. It is So That One Time.
So that one time.
Guys, so that one time, it's my favorite segment, or maybe it's your favorite segment, because it's when our guests get to take the mic and we get to tell a story and I get to sit back and relax. So Emily, the mic and floor are yours, and please tell us a story.
So that one time, I was thinking about the story that I think when I look back on it at the time, it felt like an embarrassing story. But in hindsight, I think it was actually the moment I decided I was going to marry my husband. Big statement, I know. So let me set the scene. We'd gone traveling after we graduated, and we'd gone on a big trip around Asia. We started in Thailand, on to South Korea, and our final stop was Japan. And throughout this trip, we'd had an incredible time, but unfortunately I'd been getting progressively more ill. It was actually 2 months before I got diagnosed with my chronic illness, ulcerative colitis. And we'd just climbed Mount Fuji. I'd made a deal that I would climb Mount Fuji in return for a trip to Tokyo Disneyland. I didn't know how tall Mount Fuji was when I made that promise, but there we go. Look it up, it's quite tall. And they have a proverb in Japan that every person should climb Mount Fuji once, but only a fool climbs it twice. And I couldn't agree more. Incredible view off the top. We watched the sunrise over Tokyo, but it's quite the climb. So me and my body were feeling a little bit ropey. And we were staying in Kyoto, and we'd headed out to go to the manga museum. And after stopping for some lunch, it was the first time I ever felt true urgency, which is one of the symptoms of colitis. And one thing led to another. And unfortunately, for the first time, I pooed myself in public.
Oh no.
Not my finest moment. But Japan has super loos. They are the ones with all the buttons that come with basically their own like TV remote. And fortunately, we were just around the corner from this museum, and Tom, my now husband, we'd been dating like 6 months at the time, so fresh relationship. And I thought, oh my goodness, like how am I going to admit that this has just happened? And he was super calm and super collected. He was like, the museum's 2 minutes that way. You go there. I'll go get some shorts and I'll meet you there. Went into this incredibly white, gleaming Japanese bathroom with these super toilets that came with their chutes and sprays and everything. Like, there could not have been a better place for it to happen. He turns up with replacement shorts, sort myself out, and then we go and explore this manga museum. And I think for people that have illnesses that mean that we experience things that maybe seem gross or that we think of as taboo, to have situations where people make you feel really seen and comforted and not, othered is really, really powerful. And it meant that actually my worst case scenario as someone with a bowel illness is that, right? And the fact that it had happened and that by the time I got my diagnosis, it had already happened. And I knew that actually if it did happen, it would be okay, has really, really helped me with that fear side. So it should be something I'm embarrassed of, probably, but I actually look back at it with a lot of fondness because I think it's the point that I realised that I was in a relationship where I felt super safe, which I'm grateful for.
I love that. And I mean, not the part that happened to you, but the morale part of it after. But I love how like even you said too that it's for you that learning that connection because you weren't even diagnosed then, so there was no explanation to either of you of what had happened.
I thought it was IBS gone wild. I thought the altitude of this museum has sent my insides into some kind of crazy overdrive. Or maybe the sushi messed with me. Who knows?
Did you think of it when you got diagnosed? Did you think back on your trip at all and go, oh, that makes sense now?
Yeah, I kind of continued to get progressively more ill over the next week that we were in Japan. And I landed back in the UK going, right, I'm going to have to go back to my doctor because I'd been diagnosed with IBS 2.5 years beforehand. And I went, I know IBS has its problems, but I feel like it shouldn't be like this. Went back to the doctors, told them what I'd been experiencing for 2.5 years, and they went, yeah, that's not IBS. So if in doubt, go back and ask.
I do. I like that a lot. That is good life advice. That is also good financial advice when you don't know something, go back and ask as well.
Absolutely.
And it segues us into our final segment, guys. Another place we can ask lots of questions. It's Top Search.
Top Search. You got the Top Search.
Top Search, guys. You know when people always say Google it, and you can get those sometimes insightful, sometimes confusing answers that come out of that search box. So now we are going to be going into our Top Search and using Emily as our Google answer, if you will, to answer some of our great financial questions. So the first one I wanted to ask was, I know so many people will obviously go online to look for financial advice or asking questions on taxes. That's how so many people will fall upon the financial consulting work that you do. So if people were kind of wanting that first step of educating themselves maybe before they look for a financial advisor, ask questions to their accountant, what would be sort of those search terms you would suggest they type in to find people like yourself that are doing this so they can get that kind of self-education step first?
I love Google, but I definitely think if you want short form, absorbable content, TikTok is my favorite. Great search engine. And also, I think if you look for people who specifically are saying that they are qualified accountants or financial advisors in their bios, if they've got some kind of letters after their name, in the UK, ACA, ACCA, good ones to look for. That means that person's done at least 3 years of exams, which means whilst you can't follow advice that you hear on the internet, and no advice you hear on the internet is tailored and personal enough for personal finance, it's a good place to start in terms of understanding the basics of what you might need to do. I think also Googling terms like finance for small business owners, tips for freelancers, think about what your problems are and where you might want to start. Finance is huge. So if you just start to try and educate yourself with no direction, you're probably going to get overwhelmed and find out a load of potentially interesting information, but that doesn't apply to you. I think the other thing is finance isn't regulated enough. People giving out finance information on the internet don't know you. They don't know everything about your situation. So just be really careful about blindly following advice that you find online. And if you do have an idea or see something that piques your interest, have a chat about it with your accountant or your financial advisor or your family and go from there, rather than making big changes based on something that you've seen on Instagram.
Yeah, very true. And I like how you said too, to be mindful of if you find somebody, especially if someone's in the UK and they find your content, it really resonates with the work they're doing and getting those tips, that they take that next step going to check and see like that you've taken those exams, you've done accountant work and are certified in those ways. People don't think of taking that next step of, let me just double check the person. So I think that's a really insightful first step that people can always do, and then be like, oh wait, I'm just getting advice to get advice, versus this is coming from a source that then I would feel comfortable looking into the direction they're pointing out to see if it fits for them.
Yeah, I think also if you don't know if you need advice, that's something I hear from a lot of people. Oh, I don't know if I'm big enough to have an accountant. I don't know if I'm earning enough to need an accountant. Lots of people like me, I offer free 30-minute discovery calls to potential clients. And so I have a lot of conversations with people each week. And sometimes my answer to them is, no, you're okay. Keep doing what you're doing. And these are the points where you might want to come back and have a chat. So try and find someone who's willing to have at least a short conversation for free, because then you're not risking anything. You're not spending money, but you can make sure kind of whether they're a good fit and also what help you might need. Because sometimes as a small business owner, you don't know which questions to ask.
Yeah, that's very true. And even kind of going off of that, a big thing we'll hear too is people wanting to save, whether it's saving money for if you have a chronic illness or disability, you want to have that sort of contingency fund if you have bigger expenses coming at points you can't plan, or just in general wanting to build your savings, but kind of figuring out what are different options, or how do I go about looking at my own finances and then seeing what I could save off of that? Do you have sort of tips that you give to people when they're thinking, oh, I just want to build my savings?
Absolutely. So I think everyone needs to have an emergency fund. And ideally, that needs to be 3 to 6 months of all of your necessary expenses. And by that, I don't mean your Netflix subscription or the clothes shopping that you like to do. Your absolute necessary living expenses, rent, bills, insurance, that kind of thing. And you need to know what that number is. And if you don't have that number right now set aside in a bank account, then I would say you are in a form of financial crisis. And a lot of us are there, certainly in your early 20s. I spent most of my early 20s in that situation. If that is where you are, then saving that emergency fund really, really needs to be a priority. Obviously, if you've got debt, you have to consider the balance of the two. But having an emergency fund is so important, because it means that when those things do happen, when your car breaks, when that invoice doesn't get paid on time, when you're unwell and you miss some work, that's your financial safety net. It's the way that you can look after yourself. In terms of how you build that up and save for it, budgeting is super important. I think it definitely can be really eye-opening when you look at what you're spending money on, and it makes you realize maybe some areas where that isn't entirely worth it. And in order to kind of save more, especially when you don't have that emergency fund, it's worth really thinking to yourself and being honest about how much of your spending is necessary. I went through a period of time in my 20s where, even though I was an accountant on a reasonably good salary, I'd moved to London, and living in London is expensive. City life is expensive. And I was going out with friends a lot. I was booking holidays, and I was living beyond my means, not by loads, but slowly my savings were dwindling. And I had to make the decision to, cut back on a few of those holidays, think about those nights out, and be honest with my friends. Goes back to that kind of have the conversation piece.
Yeah.
Actually, a lot of other people want to save money too. So if you chat to your friends and family and go, I would love to see you, but I can't afford to go out for dinner right now, or I'm trying to save up an emergency fund, or I'm trying to save for this. Actually, in my experience, people are really receptive to that. and they'd love to see you for a picnic in the park or a dog walk or something else that is free or close to free. You can still have fun while saving money.
Yeah, I think that last point, like you said too, is people think it's sort of closing ranks in and being like, oh, I have to cut everything and do all of that when you're planning for something so future ahead. So like you said, it's really that step of how much of your kind of the spreadsheet of what's coming in and going out every month, where like you said, especially in your 20s, when you're just coming out of a university setting or not, it's your first job, that's not usually a familiar capacity for so many people of budgeting it out and what is coming out or what I'm spending. And so much is digital or subscriptions, like you said too, and you don't even see where that's going in a lot of places. So like you said, that initial planning and then going, oh, I could maybe cut back here or here for a few months. And then I would actually, instead of spending it here, I could put it away in a savings account or a type of, in the States, we have the high yield savings or like CDs and stuff. So you would make more on it just sitting somewhere. And so that kind of, those elements are helpful because you feel like it's doing something where it's sitting and you can kind of slowly build to it without worrying about it or have that contingency is so helpful because then you're not, especially with a health issue, you might then panic of if you don't have the physical capacity to work as much. And so your income is a little lower, knowing that's there takes a really big level of stress off that you would then feel, which then obviously that amount of stress can then make your health feel even worse too.
For sure. I mean, when I started my business, it wasn't the plan. I quit my job 2 weeks before my wedding because my colitis symptoms were starting to flare again. And I could tell that if I kept going the way that I was going, was going to be entering a busy season at work. And I did not want to start married life really, really unwell. And I made the decision to leave, go get married. And originally my plan was to come back from honeymoon and then think about going and getting another job. In the end, I decided to kind of bet on myself and start a business. But the reason I was able to make that decision to jump without a plan partially was because I'm an accountant and I've got a qualification that means that I'm in a privileged position that I knew I could go and get another job, which I appreciate. It's not the situation everyone else is in, but it's also because I had that emergency fund. One of the ways I sometimes talk about it with my clients is actually an emergency fund's a bit like an F-off fund. It's in a way that, you know, if you're in a situation that you want to get out of, if you're in a job that's making you ill, if you're in a situation that's not serving you, if you're in a relationship where you don't feel safe, having that money in a bank account is your ability to hit that eject button and go look after yourself and know that you've got yourself covered. So in many ways, it's a better gift that you can give to yourself than a designer handbag or a nice holiday, because financial security means a lot.
Yeah, no, that's really, really true. I think that's really true. And even what would be for that community you work for those content creators, those small business owners, those entrepreneurs, or even just the people that are coming to you that when you were doing your accountant work, do you have sort of the top tools that you would tell them to use or top tips when it comes to them staying on top of their finances all year instead of that big rush of pre-tax filing of, oh, I need to collect everything from the last 12 months. What do you kind of advise them to use or to think of on that kind of monthly basis so that it feels a lot easier when they have to tackle their finances at that time of the year?
I'm definitely a big fan of software. I think in 2025, there is no excuse for having a shoebox full of invoices. We just don't need to do it. And, you know, software isn't expensive. It can link directly to your bank account and it lets you put expenses into categories really quickly. For my business, I have basically nothing on paper. I have an app on my phone. So if I do get a paper receipt, I take a picture of it and it's in my accounting software. I don't keep anything physically. And having those systems and doing it little by little, week by week, month by month, means that when I get to year end, there's nothing to do. In the UK, we're filming this in April. And in the UK, the tax year end is the 5th of April. And I filed my tax return on the 6th. On Sunday before I started any of my client work. And the only reason I was able to do that is I've used software all year. So my records were up to date and they were all there. If I had to do everything from the entire year in one go, it would feel like a really overwhelming task. And I think especially for a lot of the business owners I work with that have chronic illnesses, if you make finance a massive task like that, it feels like a mountain you can't climb. It's the thing that gets pushed down your to-do list because you don't want to do it and you don't really like it and it's not in your zone of genius. But if you break it up into just really manageable tasks where every time I get a receipt, I pull my phone out, I grab the app, I take a picture. It's done. To make it really instant, make it easy, and automate it with software. And if you don't know where to start with software, speak to an accountant and they can help you build a tech stack that works for you and your business.
Yeah, so true. I even, like you said too, it's sort of leaning into maybe the way that organization works well with your brain too. I'm someone who loves a color coordinated spreadsheet. I love having that checklist. And so that was something right with an accountant that I started working with was, okay, what are all of the tax forms and what are the things in each tax form I need? And so I had that as a spreadsheet that's literally in my A to Z folder, gets translated over every year. So I had that checklist that when I knew January came, I could pull that out onto our desk and go, here's all the things that I need to make sure we gather and have, so that I could kind of literally put a check mark on each of those every year. And I could see that which was getting done and plan out, okay, do this bundle this month, and maybe a couple weeks later, do this bundle. So for me, it was that sort of, I needed the visual of here's my little checklist and having that organized. And like you said, knowing certain softwares look and interact different ways, and you can even maybe ask your accountant too. I'm a little more creative. I need visual. I can't look at it very much like a spreadsheet. It won't make sense to me. And they might be able to lean towards this software might be more user-friendly to you than this one if you kind of explain to them the way your brain works. Because a lot of times you might just be given their favorite and you're like, no idea what I'm doing with it.
Yeah. And I think be honest about your communication preferences. One of the things I ask new clients as part of my onboarding is, how do you want me to talk to you? Do you like email? Do you like video call? Actually, are you the kind of person that just wants a WhatsApp voice note because you don't want to read loads and loads of information? Especially if you're, neurospicy or you've got a chronic illness, that means you don't want to stare at screens, and that's not good for you. Advocating for how you want to be communicated with is really important. If you're paying someone to be part of your team and part of your business, then they should be willing to work with you in a way that suits you. And if they're not, then you're with the wrong person. Go chat to someone else.
Yeah, very, very true. And even the last piece, the last question I was going to ask was sort of a two-parter. What was the best piece of advice you had gotten from an accountant when you were doing your content creation work versus what's sort of the best piece of advice that you feel that you give to your clients that are in the small business content creation space? Or has that piece of advice translated from when you were the content creator versus the flip side of now you giving that financial advice?
So I was my own accountant as a creator.
Oh,
I still did my own taxes even when I worked in corporate. But back then, because I was my only client, I definitely had less visibility over more creators than I do now. I think working with someone that really understands your industry is so important, because as an accountant, one of the things I love most about my job is I get an in-detail look at the numbers of lots and lots of small businesses here in the UK, which means I'm in a position to turn around to creator A and say, I think your expenses look a bit too low, or this doesn't look right, or have you thought about declaring this, because of the information I've got from the rest of my clients that work in that area. So if I could give advice to me when I was being my own accountant as a creator, it would probably be to ask more people and speak to more people to learn more about the industry, because I definitely didn't have the knowledge then that I have now. I think in terms of the best advice that I give to other people, especially when it comes to creation, it's diversifying your income. If you're a creator online and you're earning money through online social media platforms, you're kind of building your business on shifting sands, a bit like we've seen with the potential TikTok ban in the US. There were people who that was their source of income, and potentially overnight it was going to go away. So the more that you can diversify, whether that's having your own mailing list and owning that contacts, whether it's posting content on different platforms owned by different technology companies so that you've got some redundancy there, and also even branching out into things like digital products or maybe a physical business, I think that can really help, because being overly reliant on one thing is dangerous in any type of business, but especially in content creation where you don't own the platforms and the algorithms.
That's really, really true. And that's that idea of diversifying in any, like you said, in any line of work, or even just in general, having kind of that spread of option is really helpful for people to kind of keep that mindset of, I might be really good at one thing, but where could I kind of have smaller places of things so that if that one went away, I would still have a little safety net while I'm figuring out how I want to evolve and grow, so you don't feel so attached to one object. So I like that idea.
I think especially for people with chronic illnesses as well, if you can build some elements of your business that provide you with some passive income. So something like digital products or courses that you can create, put up for sale, and then perhaps in periods of illness where you can't produce things, they could still be generating revenue and income for you, can be really valuable, because you can make the most of those well periods to put time into that, make those resources, and then have something to provide you with a little bit of income if you're in a position where you can't work.
Yeah, that's that's great advice. That the passive income side of things, like you said, for the chronic illness disability space is a really beautiful thing to have that mindset of I can shift and pivot really well. I like that a lot. It's a really great piece of advice to end the episode on, Emily. I had so much fun. It did feel like you and I were just having a chit chat for an hour, just catching up about money. I love it.
Absolutely. It's lovely to catch up.
And I want to make sure everybody can find you online, and then also find, because I know on your website for our UK listeners and viewers, like you said, you do those discovery calls. I know you have resources there. So where can people find you and your content, and then also get in touch with you too?
So I'm at Emily Rose Vass on Instagram and TikTok. I post on TikTok every day. So if you're a TikTok kind of person, that's probably the easiest place to find me. And then my website is linked from my bio, and you can book a discovery call directly from those platforms, or head to emilyrosevass.co.uk.
Yes, it is. So, like I said, so many good pieces of content, so much beautiful resources as well that you can kind of use as that eye-opening and getting that spark of financial curiosity for yourself. So we will definitely link Emily's social media platforms and her website below, so you guys can check it out as well. And as always, you can find InvisiYouth on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook at InvisiYouth, and our podcast is on YouTube or on all audio podcast platforms on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you can leave us a nice review, give us those 5 stars or any amount, that definitely helps us so much. So make sure you're hitting that subscribe and being a part of the community. It helps our podcast so much. And like I said, Emily, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I had an absolute blast getting to chat with you.
Me too. It was lovely getting to speak.
Yes, and everybody else, I will speak with all of you soon. Chat soon, everybody.